Racial injustice has always been going on. If we want to look back in history times, we think about the poor boy of Emmett Till who was poorly lynched because of the color of his
The
skin.
Philly Coalition for Real Justice is a social justice organization where we do a lot of work surrounding what we call police terrorism and also police abolition. So basically, one of our main goals is to obviously end police violence, but also to start thinking about ways and actually creating strategies for ways that we can pretty much end policing as we know it in this society. The group was conceived to be a local organization only for Philly. And while we do stand in solidarity with other organizations and we even sometimes work with organizations in other cities, our goal really is to focus on what's going on in our own city.
What was really the catalyst for me being so passionate about the topic was the Trayvon Martin case. I remember it like it was yesterday, just because uh, Trayvon Martin, could have been you, could have been me, could have been, like anyone else who, was at their father's house, who wanted to just said, hey, you know what, Dad, I'm just gonna go to the store real quick, get a snack, and I'll be right back. But he didn't come right back, and just to see how that case played out, it was so simple and uh, clear cut, or so we thought, and to see that play out the way it played out, and because it wasn't, although it wasn't a police officer for that matter, it was a reflection of how the justice system has consistently failed us as a community. I mean, I was taught that, you know, I feel like as a kid, you always want to be, like a cop or a firefighter, and um, my mother never, deterred me from becoming those things. However, there was a certain point in time in my life around maybe, I guess maybe like 11 or 12 where she sat me down and let me know that like law uh, these officers, they are meant to protect and serve. However, because of the color of your skin, unfortunately, it doesn't always work to your benefit. Um, but I mean, growing up, I wouldn't say I had a negative view of the police until I experienced being profiled personally, and that was at the age of 16. Awful because I was walking around in my own neighborhood. Me and my friends were around, and just like hanging out on a Saturday afternoon and 4 p.m. And a summer day, and we're just hanging out, and a police officer who was on a bike comes up to us and asks, who we are, do we have our IDs, why we're out, and I let him know that like I lived around the corner, and uh, it was also very I want to use the right word. It was a little disheartening too, because the police officer was actually black or African
I
American.
think it's an issue of political education. So I think in this society, like you said, things are very black and white. They're kind of like this strange binary where a lot of black people in particular think that because there's an existence of black cops or black politicians, that equals progress in our society. And if you really like look at history, having what we call in the coalition, black faces in high places doesn't necessarily equal justice for the black masses. And so I think that's one major challenge because whenever we have a protest or some other activity, we'll often hear black people say, well, that's why we have a black cop or that's why we have a black mayor. And they don't realize that these black cops and black mayors, are also part of a larger system that's institutionally discriminating against African American people. And I think in Philly, it's actually interesting because some of the most horrific cases of state violence have occurred under the direction of a black person. So you had like in 1985, you had the move bombing with Mayor Good. He was the first black mayor who dropped a bomb on a huge group of black people in West Philly. You also had Mayor Nutter, who pretty much put stop and frisk into existence as we know it today. And so this just goes on and on. Seth Williams, the black DA of Philadelphia, is also responsible for, putting so many black people in jail unjustly. And so this is something that you see not just in Philly, but in every city. And I think that's an area that's really difficult to get people to understand.
Me having that first encounter when I was 16, me, being, identifying as black, and seeing all of these injustices, police brutalities, and videos of police murdering innocent people of color. That's what really makes me upset. How I feel about police brutality, I think that it's an injustice, to everyone. Martin Luther King said it best, is that a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to injustice everywhere. So I think that police brutality is awful.
They engage in several ways, but probably the most prevalent is usually we get people to contact us when they've experienced an incident of police terrorism. And so with a lot of families who are, fighting for justice because their family members have, been attacked or even murdered by the police. We also deal with people who've been victimized in other ways by the Philadelphia government. It could be like, landlord-tenant issue or something like that. So we have people calling us for a lot of different reasons. But right now we focus mostly on the police terrorism aspect, and so that's how we receive a lot of our work, I would say.
That, of course, having more officers of color who are familiar with these communities, who come from these communities, would help. However, the fraternity of the police, it's inherently discriminatory. So even though, we might have these officers who are going into, officers of color who are becoming police officers, there's just the structure and how it was built is inherently biased, and teaches those bias along with their training.
Love to see us expand our survival programs. So things like political education, food gardens, some self-sustaining housing, things like that, things that our people really need. I think protests and the political activity that we do is really good. But as revolutionaries, what we really need to do is to make sure that we're meeting the daily basic needs of our people, things that aren't necessarily reactionary, where we're not just constantly fighting against the police, but also creating real alternatives to help our people, take care of themselves, but also give them an alternative to the system that is in place that's actually hurting them. So that's where I would like to see us in about 5 years, having those self-sustaining programs and just continuing from there.